learned something the other day. Time has passed. I didn't know that trailer tires had an expiration date on them.
I think all tires.
That's how long my trailer hasn't been used much lately.
That's funny.
Rodeo time.
Welcome to the Luke Branquinho Show. I pride myself on my guests of legends of the sport, and then I got to thinking, there's one legend I haven't had on, and I've got to spend a lot of time with her lately with the Kid Rock Rodeo. Charmayne James, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here.
We're going to talk a lot of things, but what I want to start off with is you and Justin McKee and your Misty Mountain Hop in the championship game at the Kid Rock Rodeo. How cool of an experience was that to see your team come together like it did?
It was unbelievable. And we all kind of decided when it was over, everyone on our team, that we didn't know each other really that much going in. But by the time it was over, it was like we went to high school together and played on the, basketball team together. We all knew each other really well, and everybody was rooting for each other. And, what a great group of athletes. Just amazing to watch their personalities and how they competed. It was super fun.
Well, and you guys got to see it firsthand, obviously being the coach of the Misty Mountain Hop and seeing what and how the team was brought together. But talking to some of the athletes, they're like, man, I never thought I'd cheer on barrel racing like I did, or I would be in the box helping or, pushing steers, calves for, people they didn't really know. And to see rodeo, obviously, as it is, but unite in that way was pretty cool.
For sure. The guys were cheering on the barrel racers. Hey, what can I do? How can I help? I'll do whatever. And then there I was back behind the buck and shoots with the, with our roughies, and it was great. Those guys were amazing. Just so positive and energetic, and gosh, it was fun.
Yeah, and Rodeo Reimagined is kind of what they dubbed it, and very to that point, very true. I mean, you may have got to see little bits and pieces of it in your career, and I did not. But the drag race style start, the red, yellow, green go. In your career of rodeo, and I didn't mention this at the beginning. I said a legend, 11-time world champion in the barrel racing, and I know you're gonna say, I got to tell this story again because you probably told them a million times. But your great horse Scamper, you won your first world championship in 1984 at 14. Like I said, you've experienced rodeo from one end of the spectrum to the other. What have you seen in those years of how rodeo's gotten better?
Well, the pay is definitely amazing. What I would have given to have the payday now when I was, running Scamper would have been amazing. Just to see that the girls getting paid and the guys, everybody making the money, it's really good. Maybe I'd still like to see everybody making a little more money. It's still one of the last greatest American sports, that's just believes in hard work and just some the toughest people on the face of the earth. People are gravitating to it. I think that's what Kid Rock did when he promoted this Rodeo Reimagined with his rodeo and Sean Gleason at the PBR. That's what they saw, is that people wanted that. And so from, I was there when they did the Winston Pro Tour, and that was a huge success. The fans loved it. It paid good. You would make 3 runs on the final day. It would come down to the final 2. So the fans really liked it. We had autograph sessions before and after, and it just was a big controversy because not everybody could compete, and it just didn't make its way through. But there's just been a lot of ups and downs. The people are all the same. They're all still good people, and just a bunch of fun, happy, athletes that are willing to work hard and get there.
Right. Well, you talked about payout and how it's paying so much better. In 84, you won your first world championship. How much money did you win, prize money, did you win that year?
$53,000.
$499 is what it says right here. I just want to know how close you were.
Okay, yeah. Maybe that was the next year, but that's good. I haven't gone back and looked. And that was a lot.
And that was not just the national finals, though, right?
No, yeah, no, that was your
your
end of
year.
year. That
earnings.
was the year, the season plus the NFR.
And you won San Antonio, you won Houston. I'm just going down through here of in obviously the rookie of the year, which doesn't pay anything. But that was those major rodeos. Now, if you win both those major rodeos, you win over 80, 90 grand. I mean, so obviously rodeos evolved, and it's just crazy looking down through what you've won through years. So when you were 16 in 86, you won the world championship. Again, you won 151,000. So rodeo, you could see it obviously was getting better throughout the years. But again, I still feel like it's the last great American sport, and we could go up to a whole new level like we've seen with the Kid Rock and rodeo. And the athletes absolutely loved it. I had more calls from athletes saying, I didn't get to run one, but it was the best experience I'd ever got to be in.
Yeah, well, I think that rodeo was, my guys were like, that was the craziest, funnest rodeo I've ever been to. I mean, you really couldn't script everything that went on. You couldn't even be prepared for everything that you needed to know, running from one end to the other, trying to figure out what arena you were going to be in, what athlete, where. And it was a lot. But I think that it was very serious. But also at the same time, they knew that this is something that the fans would like and willing to not have everything so perfect and laid out so perfectly like what we're used to.
Well, here on the Luke Branquinho Show, we do a segment called Rodeo Trivia. What does PDR stand for?
That's it. Yeah, it was like, okay, just back and forth moving. You couldn't script it because you didn't know where you were going to be the next run. And obviously we have some things to tweak to make it a little better. You did mention the Winston Tour that you'd run 3 runs in a day. Now with horsepower, and especially in the steer wrestling, because I can remember stories of Roy Duval putting 40 plus runs on his horse in a day. This was something we talked about in our calls about, well, barrel racers might not want to run their horse 3 times, maybe once, twice. Steer wrestlers, maybe they don't want to put those runs on their horses. Back when you were competing on Scamper, was it common to go ahead and run him more than once or twice in a day?
I don't know that it was necessarily common. The way I think about it is most people are smart enough to know what their horse needs. And, you might want to say that one person, they're really good and that horse is really good because they can run more, and one's not as good because, the rider seems to be a little more, they just know the horses. And so I guess my point is that back then and nowadays, there were people who would run their horses a lot, and there were other people who knew they couldn't run them as much. Right. And it's a little bit like, I feel like Cruiser. I went to 48 rodeos when I won my 2002 World Championship on him and didn't go that much. He did better if I just picked my spots and went to. He was just real hot. The more I run him, the hotter he got. So if I could just keep him kind of chilled out, he was really good. And so with Scamper, I knew him. The more runs he made, the better he got. I mean, that's just how he was. And I think that probably ultimately one that you can run a lot, that even if maybe they're a little tired or whatever, they still just give you all they got.
Right.
And so that was part of what made him great.
Well, I know steer wrestling horses more so, to me, they're not as cheap as they used to be. I mean, now you're spending anywhere from 50 to 100,000, where when I first started, 20,000 was a lot for a bulldogging horse.
That's right.
And the prospects aren't out there in the steer wrestling like they used to be because of the team opens, the way they got those set up where horses don't have to score anymore, the World Series non-ride. That's why I blame everything on team ropers, by the way.
It is all their fault.
Yeah, exactly. But just bulldoggers aren't like they used to be as far as letting everybody on. It's just, I think horses, obviously the cost of horses has gone up. So you need to take care of your, I hate to call them a tool, but they're what we make our living with. So they're a tool. So you need to take a little better care of them. And, it's interesting from 2000 to now seeing that difference. I mean, horses in the steer wrestling, horses aren't built like they were 20 years ago either. They're not the stocky, big boned. I mean, they're a little bit more frail. So taking care of your animals, obviously number one priority even 20 years ago, but more so now it seems like.
But I guess if it's your business, people probably have been smart about it and other people have not been smart about it. And, for instance, like with Scamper, I did a lot of extra things to keep him going. I've had people tell me, well, the only reason he won is because you took such good care of him. And look, at the end of the day, things just worked out the way they were supposed to. But he could take the runs and he did better. The more you ran him, the better he got. And I think there's something to be learned by that. It's just very basic. If your horse does bad, the more you run him, you can't run him as much.
Right.
Right. Well, and probably in the bulldogging, if you got guys that's their livelihood and it's a business, they're going to know what horses can take more guys getting on or less guys getting on.
Well, and you talk about taking care of Scamper and looking back again, 20, 30, what are we now? 30, almost 40 years ago. That sounds
really?
Horrible. Yeah. Right.
Wow.
84. 80,
that's
90.
a long time.
Oh my gosh. I was 4 years old when you won your first world championship. Anyway.
Hey, I learned something the other day. Time has passed. I didn't know that trailer tires had an expiration date on them.
I think all tires.
That's how long my trailer hasn't been used much lately.
That's funny.
I always just literally ran the rubber off of them about, every 6-8 months.
Yeah. When they blew out, it's time to get a new one.
That's right. So I had no idea they had expiration dates.
They sure do. And when it hits that date, usually they go ahead and go kaboom.
They're gone. They're goners on a hot day.
Yes, exactly. You could smell the rubber melting off them. But going back, taking care of Scamper in 84 to him retiring, you didn't, and I'm not saying you didn't have the tools, but you didn't have some of the supplements, some of the feeds that they have now that these horses are getting. Do you feel like, and I mean, we're talking hindsight, obviously, not that you could have won any more because you won about everything you could on him?
Well, I feel like maybe I was a little ahead of the curve back there. Just for the fact my dad had that feedlot and we had a good nutritionist that worked there at the feedlot, Dr. Gordon Wooden. And when Scamper started doing well, it was very important. Like he stressed to us how important the minerals, the vitamin minerals, the chelated minerals were. And so I think coming from that nutrition background already, that was something that was already a huge part of his nutrition program. And then my dad had a feed company where we fed extruded feed. And that extruded feed is digested in the hindgut. And so it takes a lot less acid in that stomach to break it down. And so basically he was getting a feed back then that was better than most feeds on the market today. They don't make it anymore, but that's why now I go with Total Equine, because then it's an extruded feed and similar to what Scamper got.
Wow, I didn't realize that, and I'm imagining a lot of the competitors didn't realize that was kind of like your.
It was well because the feed was it was a roasted, like we had at the feedlot we had what they call a popper. Some people call them a roaster, and that grain would run through there and it would break that feed down where those horses could utilize it, the nutrients out of it much better. And so one of the things they ran through there was Milo, and everybody's like, oh, you can't feed Milo to horses. Well, you don't feed raw Milo to horses, but when it's cooked, it's a very good feed. And so it was just a little bit ahead of the curve, and most people were just scared of it, and I think when you start thinking you're feeding something that's bad for them and they're going to colic, you can bet that they're going to colic, right? When you are worried about it. So, that's the other part of it, is that we felt like we were feeding a great feed, and it was, and we never had a colic ever with any of the horses. So
would you load your trailer down when you'd hit the road and
yes.
Would you have, I mean, you knew pretty much how much you'd need to get before you got back home, or would you have to have somebody?
Yeah, well, and in those early years, I had to come home and go to school. So
true. I forgot.
So I was going. It's not like nowadays where you load up in June and come back in September.
Right. I
was coming, I was driving out, coming home, going to school. And so that wasn't that big of a deal. But if we were during the summer, my sisters would come to meet us or something if we needed more feed from home, if we were somewhere close to New Mexico.
Right. You couldn't do the intraweb on your laptop back in '84 and get all your homework done that way, huh?
No, I used to call home from a payphone. It's kind of hard for people to realize that.
I was talking to Cage Swore today, and he's like, I entered
Put
a
another
rodeo.
quarter in. Put
Yeah.
another quarter in.
Well, he said, I entered another rodeo. He said, I entered rodeo. He said, have you ever entered a rodeo? I'm like, oh yeah, it's a pain in the butt. I used to like just picking up the phone and calling somebody. But I could remember at Santa Maria when I was a kid, that was the hometowner. They'd have the bank of phones there, and you'd see people lined up on their horses with the phone and they call them
Procom. Yes. Yeah. We've come a long ways. Technology is amazing. The trucks, right? The first truck we had was the Chevy 454 that would vapor lock and going up the hills, and transmissions last about 60,000 miles.
Yeah.
And to the trucks nowadays, wow, but they cost a lot more too. Trucks cost about $14,000 when I first started, and now they're $100,000.
Yeah, it's well,
maybe more.
Everything, and when you talk about what rodeo needs to pay, everything in the rodeo business has increased exponentially.
Rodeo still needs to pay more for what
yes.
things are costing. Trailers, trucks, horses, gas. I mean, the price of fuel is ridiculous, and especially out in your old land.
Yeah, old
California.
land. Thank you. Yeah, old land. Thank you for saying old. Most people still claim I'm from there, but I try to set them straight.
Hey, California's great. It's a great place. I love California. It's just
the best state in the world.
It is. Everything is there. I would definitely live there if it was a little
different.
Little different.
I would still live there too if it was different. I know you've told this story 1,000 times, but I want to hear it. And I want the listeners to hear it. Scamper, where did you get him? Where did he come from? And how did it become the dream team?
So I had a horse named Bardo that I ran barrels on, and won about 15,000 on him in 2 summers going to amateur rodeos. And he broke his leg, and we had to put him down. And so it was awful. It was, I was just a kid, and that's all I cared about was my horses and loved them. And so we went to the racetrack at Raton, looking for horses, and you're a little girl and you're like, I want a black horse or a gray horse or, something pretty. Nowadays it's all Palominos and Roans, right?
Yeah, thanks.
But anyway, yeah. So my dad, he said, hey, there's this little bay horse down in the pen. I think you need to go get on him. He looks like a nice horse. So it's like, okay. So we get him out, saddle him up, and my dad said, look, he's been known to buck. He said, so you got to walk him for a while before you ever start to trot him or lope him. It's like, okay. So I go out behind the barn. I get on him and I go out behind the barn, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to lope him and see what he does. And sure enough, I kicked him into a lope and he started bucking, but not enough to get me off. And of course, I was just this crazy kid, and I thought it was funny. Like there was not one scared bone in my body. And I think he just literally, he kind of turned his head and looked at me, was like, okay, I think I like this kid. And that was just kind of the end of it. It was honestly right then and there. We both just were like, okay, this is good. And so he had been through the sale yard. Let's see, he was raised in Wetmore, Colorado by Buddy Draper. And he bucked Buddy off, put him in the hospital. I don't know, punctured his lung, broke some ribs, broke a collarbone. He was in bad shape. He was in there for a couple weeks. So Buddy sold him, went through the sale in La Junta, Colorado, went through the sale in Guymon, went through the horse sale in Clovis, ended up going through the cow sale in Clayton, where I lived, and went through several owners there before he ended up with the cowboy at the feedlot.
Wow. So he went through quite a few people before
by the time he was 4, all that had happened. And obviously it was because he bucked.
Right.
And, it's funny, you don't know what you don't know, but when I took Scamper out after he was retired and let people, they'd want their picture taken with them and, just want to pet him. And the one thing I noticed about him is he loved little girls. He loves little girls. He just nuzzle in their hair. anytime there was autistic children, there was something nurturing about him with them. You could tell a difference of him wanting to take care of them. And so maybe, he thought I was a little touched, I guess, somehow, some way too. He needed to take care of me. He's like, this girl needs a little help. But he was just that way. And so I think if you were going to try to overpower him or you were going to take the upper hand with him in maybe not the right way, you weren't going to win.
Right.
And so I just kind of had the demeanor to I just taught him that one road, and that's all he knew. I didn't know anything any different. And somehow back then I was criticized and condemned for that because I didn't have all these fancy moves of spurring them in the shoulder and picking up their shoulder and bending their head around. I didn't do all that. So I wasn't cool. I wasn't a good rider. I wasn't a good hand. And looking back at it now.
But at that point, you couldn't have been 12 years old or 13 years old, right? And you were getting criticized?
It's kind of funny growing up with all that talk early on, right? And my husband, Tony, when people to this day still say, well, wasn't it all the horse? Like they'll say that to him. And he's like, well, I don't know. You go get a 12-year-old to train a horse and you tell me. So, I mean, it was just kind of obvious that I was gifted with something God put in my line of sight, that road around the barrels. And so maybe it wasn't taught by another person, but it was just something that came naturally, just a style.
Well, and I do clinics all over the place, and I encourage all my students. I said, go learn from everybody, because you can learn something, what works, what doesn't work, and it'll help build put you together what you need. I mean, there's not one style that fits all. There's not. I don't care.
No, but then too, if for young people coming up, and it doesn't matter if it's baseball or other things, you go to a hitting coach this week, and then you go to another one next week, and then you start getting all this stuff in your head. It's too much.
Right.
And so, I mean, if people are coming to you, I would be like, let's focus in on what you're teaching them, and let's stick with it for a little while and put it together, because I just see people doing too many different things. And ultimately you can't replace experience of going in that drive to go out and compete and get up and practice every day. I mean, those are some of the most important things, and to be disciplined.
Yeah. 100%.
Right? Discipline
is 100% correct. And that's one thing I try to implement. I said, you guys need to work your butts off and, focus on your goals and not worry about the outside noise too. Back to Scamper, obviously the connection you guys had, like you said, at a young age when he looked back at you. Did you see that in Clayton, his clone, obviously, that some of the same traits?
It was so, a lot of people kind of said, well, are you going to recreate Scamper? And so I think from the very beginning, I had my boys, Tyler and Austin, and when Clayton was young, and I was just kind of really not wanting to. I wanted to be a mom. I didn't want someone else to raise my kids. That was important to me. And this breeding operation just took so much time, and going out and hauling all the horses. And so, we were just so busy, and I took a step back and was like, wait a minute, the kids are the most important thing, being there for them. All they want to do is be with you when they're little.
Right.
And so my mindset with him was not ever to run him. And so from the get-go, it was more just about breeding and putting those good legs and good feet, and that toughness in the trailer, where they just it just doesn't phase them. Like it didn't phase Scamper to get in that trailer and go, where I've had horses that just get in there and pout and they don't want to eat. And Scamper just thrived on the road. It was, I tell people it's like the Energizer bunny plugging him in. You just put him in that trailer, he's on the charger in there. It was unbelievable. And so when we started, when we cloned him and we got Clayton, that was kind of our objective, was to kind of create these horses that would be a good outcross on the current breeding, and just put a little bit of that hardiness into them.
Right.
And so Clayton himself, he rode really good. He's broke. You could rope on him. You can do a lot of things. You can go jump on him when he hadn't been rode in a year, and he's good to ride. It was just, then we ran into, I think, all the registration issues with AQHA. And it was right about that time. I was like, you know what? I'm just kind of going to scale everything back, get healthy, take care of my kids, regroup from, 19 years of just going as hard as you could go. And that's kind of where I'm at today. And so there's some Clayton babies out there who are really good. I have one right now, Victor. He's out of a Dash to Fame mare by Clayton. Absolutely love him. I would like to get him out and go to some barrel races. I think he's going to be pretty talented. So I'll just do it to have fun. It's like my hobby. It's like golfing now, At least I still love my horses and like to go out and do it. And teaching is my ultimate passion. I like that, and helping people take care of their horses and treat them with respect. And they don't have to do all this stuff to them to make them work good. That, all this tie their heads around and all this crazy stuff to get them to work good.
Well, and we talked about that. I can't remember when it was, just a few weeks ago, but how you said you scaled back and the kids are obviously number one. I think you were on your way to a baseball game because both boys are heavily involved in baseball, right?
Yes. Yeah. Tyler was at Texas State, got a scholarship out of high school to go there. And then Austin is a sophomore in Bernie, and they both just love baseball. And the funny thing is Tyler rode when he was little, and then he never wanted to ride again. It was all baseball. And now he's wanting to ride. He's wearing jeans and boots, and so he kind of likes it. And so when he's rode, I've put him through drills, just teaching him to guide, like what I put my students through. And he's actually a really good rider, because he never learned anything wrong, never learned anything bad. So he sits good. He has good hands, and the horses don't take advantage of him.
Well, it's funny you say he never learned anything wrong. It's funny when you teach the right way, and then they take time off or just quit for a while. You don't have to break any bad habits, which is so easy, or it's so nice for a coach like me, steer wrestling, or you teaching barrel racing. It's so nice to help move them. It moves them along a lot faster. Yeah,
I should send Tyler to you to bulldog a little bit. He would probably be good. He's a big guy.
Bring him on. That'd be fun.
Okay. No, that would be awesome.
Yeah, we'll make it happen for sure. Going back, to motherhood and all that. I mean, rodeoing with kids, we see it nowadays where kids are in the rigs going and traveling with their families. It wasn't that much of an option back when I guess you were rodeoing, it was hard because the rigs were a lot different.
Yeah, no, I think it's great that they can take their kids with them and get to travel all over, and they stay right there in their trailer. And those that are homeschooled, can get homeschooled on the road. I think it's a really great thing. My kids wanted to go to school. They love their friends, and we've been really blessed here in Bernie to have such a great community of just great families and really good kids, for our boys to be around and playing sports. This is where they needed to be.
Yeah, that's it. Finding a place like that, like we're here in Hico, and it seems to be that way for us too. So much community support for the rodeo and the sports and everything. And Justin Schaefer moved in, or he lives right here in Hico, where I send Cade to steer wrestle because he listens to Justin way more better.
They don't listen to, they don't like to listen to Dad.
No, but he's getting better. He is starting to ask me some questions.
They'll grow up. Yeah. How old is he now?
He'll be 16 in a couple days. So
yeah.
It goes by fast. And then
it goes very fast.
And then Jameson's 14 and Bear is 8. So they grow like weeds. Yeah. And they're all loving baseball. They're all loving rodeo. So we're going to keep them hooked. And I told them, we'll do whatever you guys want to do, but we're going to do it 110%. We ain't half-assing nothing.
Right. Yeah. Right. All in.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to the NFR, and I don't remember what year it was because I remember it was talked about a lot. You having the number one back number and having a chance to win the all around. What was that? 89, 88-ish? When was that?
Let's see. It might have been 87 or 88.
Let me see. I'll look at my notes. I guess
it's a good question.
86, 151,000.
Okay, 86. Yeah.
And did you enter the team roping to try to, and you had to win like 2,000 or 1,000 or 3,000 to be qualified for the all around? Is that correct?
You know what? There was a lot of talk about that, and I thought about trying to do that, but I think they ended up saying no. It didn't cross over because it was WPRA.
WPRA. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, so I really was never really truly eligible to win the all around, but Louis Fields won it that year, won the all around that year, and he was great. He just supported me. Like, I just love that guy. He was such a good role model and inspiration, and just was always encouraging to me, and loved that I was winning so much. He was the first guy to just embrace it, where the rest of them were just mad and pissed off about it.
A woman has more money won than us. That's bullshit.
No, not a woman, a little girl. Like,
right, exactly.
One of the PRCA board members wrote in the Denver, like in one of the Denver newspapers, it's a sad day in rodeo when a 16-year-old girl is winning more money than the men. Wow. Like, that was in the paper. Wow. So there was definitely a lot of bad feelings about it. So to have Louis there to be so supportive was really cool.
I got to spend a little time with Louis when Casey was just starting, and that guy he was gold. I mean, like you said, he would do everything he could to build you up, lift you up, inspire you, and make you feel like you belong. And just being a kid from California, to have a guy like Louis Fields sit there and just talk normal, we didn't even talk rodeo. We talked hunting, we talked ranching, and Louis was he was awesome.
He was a good dude. He was just truly a good dude.
And the apple doesn't far fall from the tree, because his kids
Casey's the same way.
Like him. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a great family. So, Charmayne, I appreciate you coming on the show. I'm looking forward to, hopefully we get more of these Kid Rock and rodeos going and help elevate the sport, Rodeo Reimagined. And I just appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's fun.
Well, here on the Luke Branquinho Show, we do a segment called Rodeo Trivia. What does PBR stand for? It stands for Professional Bull Riders. Hey, you want to see more in-depth details on the Luke Branquinho Show? Make sure you like and subscribe.